with law, you can go shop for your lawyer where you might go to a free consultation here and say, I really didn't like that firm, and then go to a free consultation at a smaller firm and say, I really love this firm, or vice versa. So for anybody seeking legal counsel, go lawyer shop and see who fits your vibe, who fits that relationship that you're looking for. Keep looking for one that you're going to be comfortable and you're going to trust.
I actually really love seeing this sort of content because it humanizes physicians. I feel like a lot of people think that we are very boring people who spent 20 years of our lives studying to do what we do and that we have no life outside of work. And so it's really nice to show patients that we do have these great moments. We do enjoy things that are not medicine. But more importantly, I see that we also deal with stress, anxiety, loss.
There is a saying that you should never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. Usually that's for court or hearings because you don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to be caught off guard with the gotcha moment.
Medicine,
law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nick. You're listening to the Medico-Legal Brief.
one doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Medico-Legal Brief, where medicine meets the law. I'm Lawyer Nick. I'm with Dr. Long. If you haven't already, please go like, subscribe, comment. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, and we're on all the social medias, including TikTok and Instagram. We have a fun episode today. Long, I think that when we've been on social media, a lot of times we see people that we listen to, either podcasts or streamers, pull up the clips on YouTube or Instagram and then add their own sort of commentary, add their own pizzazz on what they see and what's going on in the video. We're going to go ahead and try that for the very first time.
It will be interesting to actually hear what is dramatized versus what is reality, because a couple of the clips that I've brought on here, I'm interested to talk about.
Now, when you are perusing social media, I'm sure you're doing the same thing that I'm doing, but I'm going to ask, do you see these clips and you kind of think to yourself out loud, like that's not true, or wow, that's very interesting, I didn't know that? Do you have that same sort of experience?
Most of the time, but I will say that the majority of the medical clips I've picked out are from the show called The Pitt off HBO, and it's actually very, very realistic. We've had conversations on the doctor forums, and it's probably one of the most realistic and accurate shows out there right now in terms of medical.
Now, one of your other favorite shows used to be House, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it compare to House?
No. So I watched House when I was in college before medical school, and that completely inaccurate. Watching an episode now, it's very hard to finish an episode because it's not realistic at all. That's not how doctors work. That's not how medicine works. It's very much more dramatized than what we'll see here today.
Yeah, I remember when I started law school, Suits had just come out, and I actually loved watching Suits. And then I stopped watching Suits because I have enough law school in my day-to-day. I don't feel like I need additional law on top of that by watching a show every single week. And from what I've heard, it's a great show, but I see clips and I'm like, okay, that actually makes sense. And other times like that makes absolutely no sense. That's not accurate whatsoever. So I'm interested to see the feedback we give on these clips. So if you're ready, I'm also ready. This is one of the clips from the show, The Pitt.
It used to hurt my feelings a lot, but I can't help it. I work at the speed I'm comfortable at.
Because you're afraid of making a mistake?
I'm always afraid of making a mistake, aren't you?
Yeah, of course I am, but you know what I mean. You make a mistake once and somebody dies and you feel so badly about it, you'll never let it happen.
How is that wrong?
Because you waste time and money on unnecessary tests. You keep sick patients waiting too long. You miss out on cases you could be learning from. You shortchange your own education.
Well, Long, from a non-doctor point of view, non-medical point of view, there's a lot in there. Before you give your commentary, what is an R3?
An R3 is a resident who is in their third year. We had our discussion on our medical education. Once you graduate medical school, you then have 3 to 5 years of residency. And so for emergency medicine, it's usually between 3 to 4 years that you have to do residency for.
Okay, that makes sense. And our 3 years of law school, we have 1L, 2L, 3L. So it's very similar. I just didn't realize you guys had a similar nomenclature for that as well. So yeah, go ahead. What is going on here? What are your thoughts?
So much to unpack. This is a struggle that we have not only in our training, but also once we get out into the real world when we're attendings, right? So there's always this balance between giving really good care to patients, but also making sure that we're taking appropriate care, but also making the administration or the employer, the hospital system happy too, because obviously they want to see more profits. They want to see more patients through the door. But you got to balance that with the appropriate tests and make sure that you're doing everything right for the patient. And so that's where a lot of misconception from the public is that they think that physicians are not caring, that we're just trying to push them through the door. It's not that. It's we're trying to be not only efficient, but we're also trying to make good use of their time, our time, but also taxpayer dollars, right? So every test that we order needs to have a reason behind it, and it needs to add to the story. It needs to give us some data that is going to be worthwhile. It shouldn't just be a test to order just to order. And so sometimes you see that quite a bit, especially from people who are early on in their training or people who don't have the appropriate training. They may order more tests, more labs because they have no idea what they're looking for. So sometimes they kind of cast that wide net and hope to find something. Whereas physicians, the idea behind our training is that we focus in on those tasks to try to figure out, like our sole goal is try to figure out what's going on so that we can then remedy it from there. And so we are taught specific labs, results, interpretations to help us guide on the care.
Now, is the Pitt, is this setting in an emergency room? Or
Yeah,
just...
so the Pitt is set in the emergency room. And like I said, this is very realistic to even the way I trained, even though I didn't train in a big hospital system like this. I trained in South Jersey, and our emergency room wasn't quite as busy, but still we had the same dynamics in terms of teams. We had medical students, residents, attendings, and then the nursing staff all around. So this show is very, very realistic in terms of the interactions and the relationships that you build within the room there.
Anything you would have done differently in this situation?
Just from an outside view, I hear what she's saying. She wants to make sure that she does the right thing for the patient and or the right test. But that's where the issue comes in, is that if you do that for every single patient, that's when other patients start to complain. Why have I been sitting here for 8 to 10 hours? It's because, well, you have this other doctor who's been ordering every test under the sun to make sure and figure out what's going on with the patient that they're currently dealing with. If you want the same sort of care, you have to sit there and wait the 6 to 8 hours and not complain about it. But then the other side of it is she is in training. So her goal is to see as many patients as she can, because the more bad things that she sees or the more normal things that she sees in the future, she can then delineate what is sick, what is not sick, something that she can triage. Is it something that I need to do something urgently on, or is it something that can wait? The idea behind training is that the more patients that you can lay hands on, the more issues that you can see or pathologies that you can see, the better the training will be.
Okay. And one final question. I don't know if I've ever asked this, but when you're a resident and you're going and doing your rounds, going from room to room, do you have an attending there with you doing it? Or are you doing it solely by yourself?
So it depends. Usually when you start out as a resident or an intern, first year resident, then you usually have to go in with someone for maybe the first couple of days, just kind of catch your bearings, make sure that your rapport building, your personality fits well, and that we can send you out on your own. But then after that first week, usually, yes, you are seeing your patients on your own. However, you do always have to come back to either a senior resident or the attending and tell them the story of the patient. And then they have to run through the case together, meaning going through the labs, through the imaging, and dissecting how you process this patient and how did you come to the conclusion and what further testing are you choosing and why you're choosing it. And that's how you learn.
That would make sense why you might be second guessing yourself or really trying to dive into the details, because you want to make sure you're right. You spend all this time learning and you want to do right by your patients.
It's a double-edged sword because, again, you can order all these tests and eventually find out what's going on, but it has to be in the right setting, right? In the emergency room, it's about fixing emergencies and then setting them off, stabilizing them and then setting them off. It's not trying to get to the solution or trying to find exactly what's going on. That's usually set for the inpatient setting once they've been admitted into the hospital or once you go see your primary care.
All right. So the next one that we have is from the show called Suits. I have not watched Suits past the first season, so this will probably be new to me, but let's see what they got.
Mr. Allen, what exactly are you getting in return for your testimony against my client?
He's getting immunity for the crimes he committed.
What were those crimes?
I gave William Sutter inside information over the course of a decade.
And how exactly did you do that?
When my bank was hired to review a transaction and I determined it was going through, I'd call Jill Miller and I'd give her the relevant names of the parties.
I'm confused. You told the SEC that you were feeding William Sutter inside information.
We had an understanding.
Understood by who?
William Sutter.
Did you ever have a specific conversation with Mr. Sutter?
Jill said that he understood.
You can't testify William understood anything. It's called hearsay. If you don't have proof, the jury can never hear it.
Well, I don't believe this. You don't have a paper trail. I have the phone records.
I mean to Sutter.
She's his goddamn daughter.
Yeah, and every murderer has a father, too. Doesn't mean they're in on the crime.
Save your metaphors for the trial, Harvey. We don't need them here.
I don't need to save anything for trial because you made a deal with this man for nothing, and this deposition's over.
I just thought it was really interesting to kind of look into is this like realistic? Is this how you kind of get those gotcha moments? Is it during these depositions, or is this something that you already think ahead before you see your clients and the opposing party?
No, great question. And I actually really, really like this clip. This clip is very, very accurate representation of what a deposition is. We've talked about depositions before where it is a form of discovery. So during a deposition, you are evidence gathering. You are essentially bringing in opposing counsel and the opposing side, and then you are usually sitting with your client. Sometimes you don't have to, but you'll have your client there as well. And then you'll have the attorneys on each side of the room. And the person that is being deposed is now testifying under oath. They're sworn in by the court reporter, and the court reporter is writing up the transcript. Sometimes they're recording via video. 100% of the time they're recording via audio. That way they can get their transcript correct. But during this time, you are allowed to ask pretty much any question you want. And you want to stay on point because the other side can object to it. But when there's an objection within the deposition, the attorneys can either argue over it, or what ultimately ends up happening is you can go ask a judge as to whether or not that objection should be overruled or sustained. The reason you want to object while you're going through the deposition is the testimony can then be brought up during a trial or hearing, and you want to make sure that you reserve your objection. So when it does get brought up, you can then object during trial or during a hearing and reserve that objection to allow the court to rule on it. These conversations, they end up pulling out a lot of information, a lot of evidence. There is a saying that you should never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. But usually that's for court or hearings because you don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to be caught off guard with the gotcha moment. So depositions are very good for gathering the information that you need to know about. And it could be basic personal information. It could be asking questions regarding what happened during a certain event. It could be asking questions about other evidence. Here, you're having two civil lawyers conduct the deposition. So there's no criminal stuff going on within this clip. But at the same time, they're trying to lay the foundation. Harvey is trying to figure out, okay, what is this information that I need? And then he gets to the gotcha moment, and it caught opposing counsel off guard. You know, opposing counsel said, "Oh my gosh, there's not a paper trail here," and that was shocking. But this is very accurate assessment of kind of like the back and forth and conversational style of a deposition with the questions that occur.
In a mindset thinking, is this how you as a lawyer are taught to think? Like you're constantly looking for those details that may throw off the case? Because I mean, obviously when I was listening to this, I was thinking, okay, well, it sounds like this guy did something wrong and he was being fed the information. I would never have thought, well, it had to be fed directly to the person that we're trying to indict or whatever. And so it's just interesting that from a lawyer perspective and how you're taught, you're constantly looking for those corners or those crevices where there may just be a little crack that then you can then open up and blow up the case.
During the depositions, we try to get the witness to talk. If you are talking, that's good for us, as long as you're staying on topic. If you start talking about your conspiracy theories or your politics or something crazy, we don't really want to hear that. We want to hear the information that's pertinent, and we try to ask open-ended questions to get certain information, and then we'll ask the more pointed leading questions if we're trying to lock them into a certain position. It's one of those things where by asking a leading question or a yes or no question, you can play that game of getting the witness to respond either yes or no. But if you're information gathering, you'll want the witness to get into that maybe longer monologue, talk about what's going on. And it's on their attorney to sit there and kind of stop them or reel them in or give them guidance. You know, you actually practice with your witness before going into the deposition. Sometimes it's really big practice where they'll set up a whole table and actually practice the deposition questions. Other times it's just a quick coaching 5 minutes before that says, hey, listen to the question, answer only what's asked, and then I'll give you feedback as we go. The other important note here, and we've talked about this from an evidentiary standpoint, is the hearsay aspect of it. When he's talking about what somebody else has said, you can't bring that into court. And he's planning on bringing that into court. And it's like, you can't do that because it's hearsay. It's going to be an objection. That's another important note in this clip, is that evidentiarily, he is right on point with the hearsay claim.
Cool. So then do people use these depositions sometimes as kind of like a pre-trial, like a pseudo trial, but then the side that, like in this case, has been made this mistake, they got us, can they now trying to flip the script and change around their argument or whatever after the fact? Is this also helpful for them to see where the defendant's team is thinking, like what their mindset is in terms of the trial?
Yeah, within this and within any deposition, as you're going through and you're discovering things, right? Whether it's hard evidence, whether it's video footage or photography or testimony, you're trying to see how does this play into my overall case. So yeah, you could have a deposition and realize that you have no case and that maybe you need to withdraw your lawsuit. You might realize you have a lot bigger case than actually exists. And it's all part of the discovery process. Sometimes you'll also get into a deposition and you'll realize that maybe your client is full of shit or that they were wrong. And you then need to have that hard conversation of, we need to settle because this is going to happen if we don't settle. It's a very, very useful tool. It's very expensive. It's a lot of lawyer time. It's a lot of court reporter time. Like you're paying a couple $1,000s every single time you want to do a deposition. And if you're thinking about a bigger case where you're trying to depose multiple clients, it can really add up and add to those court fees. So you want to use it wisely, but it can definitely be a great tool. All right, let's go to the next one.
Hey, you, pasty white. How about a sandwich?
What brings you here today, sir?
I'm here for a fucking sandwich.
Okay. Okay, excuse me.
Perla?
Perla, can this patient get a sandwich?
I already gave you a sandwich, bro.
I ain't ate this whole week.
Sure, give him another sandwich. They're on the food cart. Just make sure it's not egg salad or he'll throw it on the floor.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
What in the world is going on here?
This guy is actually a medical student, fourth-year medical student who is rotating through this emergency room. He is walking around and I'm sure he has a task that has been assigned to him and this patient stops him. I picked out this clip because it's, again, very realistic. If you are a medical student working in the emergency room, in the hospital, in the clinic, you meet patients sometimes and they think that you're on staff. And you essentially are. And so you try to help out as much as you can. But what they did really appropriately was make sure that they asked someone that is more senior. So whether that's the nurse, whether that's another resident, whether that's the attending, just making sure, is it allowed to feed this patient? Because there are things that patients shouldn't be doing. Maybe there is an allergy. Maybe they're planning on getting some sort of procedure and they should be NPO or no food by mouth. There are a lot of reasons why patients shouldn't be eating. So you don't want to be that one person that accidentally feeds the patient that then delays this whole procedure or this whole scenario that is supposed to treat the patient. I thought that they showed that very well in terms of acting, because we do have a lot of students who forget and they're just trying to be nice and helpful. And so they just go ahead and give whatever the patient is requesting. And sometimes that causes a delay or an issue for the patient later on. The other nice thing is just tapping into the nursing staff, right? Nurses are honestly the other half of the medical team. Yes, the doctors make the decisions, the diagnoses, the workup, all that, but the nurses are the ones that actually put everything into implementation. And they're also the ones that are at the bedside the most. They know the patients the best because they are there the whole shift with the patient. So as you can see, she knew exactly what sandwiches not to give, when he ate, when he didn't, like all of the preferences that they should know. Whereas if you had gone to the attending would not have known and wouldn't have given you that little tidbit or that little detail. And then maybe you would have brought him back an egg sandwich and he would have thrown it in your face. All those little things are so realistic in terms of the real world. Nurses, we rely on them so much. And so we try to uplift the whole team. And then the very last little tidbit is at the very end, you could see that he snuck a sandwich himself. That so brings me back so much to my medical school days because you're broke. Like you're literally paying people to teach you because you're paying tuition, you're paying travel, you're paying to stay in these hotels or Airbnb so that you can do these different rotations and learn from these people. And so when you have a chance to get free food, you're going to snag it right away. But also because you don't have time. Like if you're on shift, you're working, you usually don't have too much time to go grab lunch or go grab a snack. And so any chance you get, you take it.
A few questions coming off of that. In other careers, other corporate careers, unless something is, explicitly free, it could be akin to stealing. By him taking that sandwich, could there be, a violation of ethics or him stealing from the hospital because he's taking food that may or may not be designated for the medical staff?
I mean, if you really wanted to get down to the legal, I'm sure that there is a case to do that. But I know for a fact that 99, 100% of places, there are food not only for the patients, but also just for the staff that are free. So yes, it's there for people to take. It's whether or not how strict they are. But I would say that I have not been to any single place where the nurses haven't just passed out food. Like, oh, you look famished. Here, just have the sandwich.
Fair. And then one of my other points is to nurses. I've actually heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that you might have maybe a seasoned surgical nurse who's been doing it for 20, 30 years and a new surgeon conducting, one of their first surgeries out on their own. And that surgical nurse will be almost kind of running the show at times because they have so much knowledge and trying to guide the doctor, guide the surgeon in what they should be doing or what they should be considering while they're going through, and maybe even commenting on things that maybe the surgeon has never seen before. Is that kind of true to form with the level of experience with some of these nurses? Are they sometimes advising the doctors on what they should be doing, especially newer doctors?
Yes and no. So that is very important how we frame that, right? In terms of medical knowledge, absolutely not. The surgeon has gone through their residency, the additional fellowship to train and know the medical side of things. So no nurse is going to be able to help make those medical decisions. They're not going to tell this surgeon, oh, you should be cutting 2 centimeters shorter or in this direction. In no scenario should that be happening. And if there's an issue with not only the nurse, but there's an issue with the surgeon. But when it comes to medical knowledge, I would find it hard to believe, even if the surgical nurse has been there for decades, they don't have the foundation of the pathophysiology, the anatomy, the hands-on actual cutting of these patients, the surgery itself. So it'd be hard for them to give that advice. However, nurses who have stayed in a location for so long, they know all the protocols, they know all the different types of equipment that are available, the different options. When a new surgeon comes in, they may have trained in California, but on the East Coast in New York, maybe they have different types of brands. Maybe they have different types of tools. Maybe it's not aluminum or steel, but it's plastic. Those are the things where the nurse will then step in and say, hey, I see that you've been struggling with this, but we do have this other tool that you may not know about. Let's try using that instead. I can see that absolutely happening day in, day out. That happens anywhere you go, anywhere you start. Because again, as the physician coming in, you are comfortable working with the tools that you've worked with during residency and fellowship, but the tools in your new job, you don't know everything that's available. It will take time to learn those things.
That's kind of similar to the law in which, as a lawyer, I can get up in front of a judge and I can make an argument, right? But my paralegal isn't allowed to cross the bar, what we call it, and do the same thing. However, if I'm showing up at a firm, I need to understand the administrative aspects of it. And on top of that, paralegals, they do a lot of drafting pleadings, drafting petitions. There have been times in which I've worked with an office manager or a paralegal as a newer lawyer where they've come to me and said, I'm sorry, this isn't going to get approved by the court clerk. You're missing A, B, and C. And you think, well, I'm the lawyer. Why am I being told what to do? It's because that person has the experience in that environment as far as getting things approved, getting things signed off on, so on and so forth. It's kind of similar in that aspect.
Right. And again, in the medical field, it's all about teamwork. It's really important that we understand everyone's roles and that we are overseeing each other and making sure we have each other's backs. It's not about who's better, who knows more, but it's using our knowledge and our expertise to make sure that the patient care is appropriate and at its best and the best that we can offer to everyone. And so again, the nurses are worth their weight in gold because we heavily rely on them and we need them to do our jobs, jobs better.
Yeah. My final point on this is, and I had a friend years ago who was an EMT out in Colorado, and he had mentioned that when it got really, really, really cold outside, the homeless population all of a sudden started having a lot of chest pains. And what he had commented on was the fact that the indigent, the homeless, they would call 911. They would end up getting a free ride to the hospital. Obviously, they can't pay because they're homeless. But while they're at the hospital, they get a warm bed for the evening or at least a few hours. They get food, they get water, etc. When this clip first started, I thought that was the route it was going to go, of this individual being indigent and not being able to, maybe being a homeless guy and wanting something to eat. Do you see that a lot, or have you seen that in your career where the system is kind of being used in that way by people who are maybe not as fortunate?
Absolutely. And it's not just about the unhoused folks, but it's also the elderly. We have a lot of patients who have dementia, who live with their families. And during the holidays, it's a holiday break. Some of their families will then drop off their grandma, grandpa, because they don't want to deal with them during Christmas for the week or weekend. Drop them off and say, hey, he fell, or hey, he's just not acting his normal self. So you need to do a full workup. They get stuck in the hospital because there's no safe discharge, meaning we can't send them home safely because family feels they can't take care of them. The patient will stay in the hospital for a couple of days until then after the holidays, all of a sudden magically, now the family is saying, oh, we can take him back now. That happens quite a bit more than we realize. And it's unfortunate, but that is unfortunately how the system has been created and those loopholes that a lot of people utilize.
I'm actually shocked to hear that. I never thought that would be the case with family members just dropping off grandma who has dementia just because they don't want to deal with them for a holiday or a weekend or something.
Obviously, that's unspoken.
Yeah.
But when you do the workup and there's nothing wrong, and then you say, hey, actually, they can leave from the emergency room, and the family says, we're already too busy. We can't take care of them this weekend. It's clear like that was the reason.
Wow,
and the hospital legally cannot send the patient home. Can't just send them out the door.
Yeah, that's really sad
for themselves.
That's really sad, but yeah, that's rough to take. So, all right. So I have a legal clip, and it is this one right here. So I know that I picked this clip out, but the first part of it is showing all of the lawyer top 100 awards that you hang up on your wall at your law firm. And then the second part is this lawyer dancing around and being really gimmicky in order to bring clients in. My first question to you, based on this clip, is do doctors have the best 100 doctors in the area, so on and so forth, that come up in the magazines and come up in the area and get posted online?
We do have that, but I honestly don't think anyone actually pays attention to it. There's only a very small subset of people because you actually have to pay to be on it. It's not truly top 100 based on ratings. It's whether or not you're willing to put out the money. The majority of physicians don't buy into it. And I don't really know how many patients actually view that because I personally don't look at that for not only my lawyer, but also my physician. I don't look at those sort of things to determine whether or not they're a good lawyer. I actually go by word of mouth or by someone that recommended them.
That was one of the reasons why I brought this video into the podcast today, because with the accolades and the voting, a lot of people don't understand that you are paying for the top accolades. It's similar in the law where we have a magazine out in Dallas called D Magazine, and every couple of issues they release the top 100 real estate agents, top doctors, top lawyers. And what it is individuals or companies paying for a spread or paying for somebody in their firm to be part of that magazine. And so sometimes the more you pay, the bigger the accolade. Maybe the bigger the spread, maybe an entry-level payment is just your name on the list. But most people need to do their due diligence when they're looking for any sort of professional, not just rely on those accolades. Another dirty little secret in the industry is if there is something in which people are actually voting on, like some sort of award or a top in the industry or top in the area, there are instances in which maybe a firm is trying to push a certain individual into the limelight. Maybe they're an up-and-comer, maybe they're a new associate, and they need to get them clients and get them the billable hours that come with the clientele. And so the firm will all vote one or two people into it and kind of bring that person to the forefront. Or the horse trade votes with other firms where it's, hey, if you vote for our person over here, we'll also vote for your person over here. And then we can bring both of them to the forefront with these accolades. So I would just press on everybody that when you're looking for a lawyer or a doctor or a real estate agent or a dentist, you need to do your due diligence, not necessarily rely on these big magazines or big social media sites to give you the quote unquote top.
What are your thoughts on professionals using social media to advertise themselves? Do you think it's a good look or a bad look?
I actually have a video for you. I know you like EDM. I also like EDM. We've talked about festivals before. This woman she is either in residency or she's going to be a doctor, but she's also very into EDM, and you may have seen her before. So I'm going to play the clip and then we can comment on it. My question to you is, she has a social media following that is half her content is based on her actually being a doctor and what she goes through on a daily basis. But then a lot of it transitions into her festival lifestyle, enjoying EDM, electronic dance music, the outfits that come with going to the festivals, so on and so forth. I brought this clip in because I wanted your opinion on that exact dynamic of professionals, doctors using social media and using social media in the right way to promote their practice or even promote themselves as individuals.
I actually really love seeing this sort of content because it humanizes physicians. A lot of people just think that we are these black and white, very boring people who spent 20 years of our lives, 2 decades studying to do what we do, and that we have no life outside of work and outside of medicine. And so it's really nice to show patients that we do have these great moments. We do enjoy things that are not medicine. We enjoy EDM. We enjoy life outside of work. But more importantly, it's important to see that we also deal with stress, anxiety, loss, all of those other things that people don't realize or try to not think about when they think about their physician. They always want to think that their physician is going to be this very stoic, just there for me when I need them, and that they're always going to be very professional. That's true. In a work setting, in the clinic, in the hospital, it's very important to maintain those boundaries and that professionalism. But I also think that it's important that we show that we do other things. But my question to you was more of using social media to advertise your job or your career. That can become very gimmicky, especially in, say, a lawyer world, the dental world. Even if you are opening your own private practice as a physician, sometimes it's quite cringy on the content that gets put out. It's very dramatized or overly exaggerated. And I don't know. And I have no idea whether or not that actually turns patients on, and does it make people want to go see them or not? And that's where I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that kind of led into this because when I see this video, I agree professionals have lives outside of their profession. We have hobbies, we have things that we enjoy. Nowadays, everybody's focusing on their brand and focusing on what they bring to the table as far as their professional careers. I kind of struggle with this video a little bit because I think about intent. What is the intent of the video? What is the intent of what they're showing? Is this individual trying to show that she's a doctor? Is she trying to bring in clientele? Or is she just trying to show the fun side? And it's kind of like, what is that being used for? If she's trying to drive clientele, maybe she's trying to look for a certain clientele and bring that clientele into the fray. Or is it the fact that maybe she doesn't really want to be a doctor and she'd rather be a social media influencer? Because it seems like she might be getting more of her followers from the fact that she's engaged in EDM and the festival lifestyle. And so I am very big on the intent behind your brand and social media. Like, what are you trying to achieve? And I'll never fault anybody for the intent. When it comes to the gimmicks, lawyers can be pretty damn gimmicky. You see the signs, you hear the radio, you hear the law boss or the law dog or whatever it is in your area, and it's the Texas Hammer. It's gimmicky. When you're hanging out your own shingle, it's sometimes necessary. You're either going to get the clientele from either word of mouth of just being awesome and people spreading the word, or you really have to go out and advertise. And sometimes the more gimmicky you are, the better it is. The jingles stick with you. The fun little stories, you think, okay, well, I've been hurt in a car accident. Who do I call? And then the number comes up in your head. You're like, well, I might as well just give them a call. I don't want to go look through D Magazine for the top one. Definitely be cringy. There's no doubt about it. It can be super, super cringy. That's maybe part of standing out. Some of our commentary, even on our podcast, can be cringy, and we'll post it. We'll post the commentary because it brings in views and it brings in comments, and it sets yourself apart. It's needed, it's necessary. And in this day and age of social media, where you can get free advertising just by being on X or being on TikTok or being on Instagram, it's necessary because, billboards and radio ads, they can cost a lot of money. So for somebody coming out and being able to do it for free, there's a lot of merit to that.
Would you hold more weight in someone that is able to afford a billboard, say, right in front of your house, versus a recommendation from a friend who said, hey, this doctor was really good? Or are you going to go to the doctor that you can see on the billboard every morning when you drive to work? Or are you going to go to the doctor that your friend recommended very, very highly?
I'm going to go for the recommendation. And that's because when I see billboards, sometimes I think maybe too big for the situation. What I'm looking for personally out of a lawyer or a doctor is more of a almost small town personal feel, where I know when I walk in, they're going to know my name. I'm not just another patient on their spreadsheet or client on their spreadsheet. I'm somebody that can build a rapport, have a relationship, and really move forward building that medical or legal or dental relationship. And so I will go off of referrals more so than just seeing the name on the billboard. It might be a little bit different for other things. If I see a billboard for a car dealership, maybe that's where I go just because I saw the billboard. But when it comes to something personal like medical or legal, I'm going to go through word of mouth. What about you?
I would choose the same. I would absolutely go by recommendations of the community, of my family and friends over what I'm seeing on advertisement or social media. However, it would catch my eye. I would probably watch the video, look more into it, and just kind of get an idea of what they are offering. But the thing I worry about when you advertise in such a big of a scale is exactly as you said, like how personalized will the interaction be? Is it going to be very robotic? Is it going to be very just in and out? They've got it down to such a science that patients see this video. Now they get this email, they sign up, they do a quick 5-10 minute intake, and then they see the doctor for 10-15 minutes and then they move on. It can turn into a very unpersonalized interaction or relationship.
Yeah. And my advice to those seeking legal counsel is most of these firms have free consultations. Granted, they might be 30 minutes or an hour, but you can go lawyer shop without spending a lot of money for the most part. Unlike medical, where you kind of have to go in, do the new patient, go see a PA maybe, or a new doctor, or what have you. With law, you can go shop for your lawyer where you might go to a free consultation here and say, I really didn't like that firm, and then go to a free consultation at a smaller firm and say, I really love this firm, or vice versa. For anybody seeking legal counsel, it's okay to go to multiple lawyers. You don't want to be the third lawyer on the case. Like, you don't want to take on a case where there have already been lawyers that have either left the case or gotten fired. But if you're just doing a straight consultation, it's okay to go lawyer shop and see who fits your vibe, who fits that relationship that you're looking for. And that's something that I advise a lot is don't just pick the first lawyer. If you're getting a feeling, go find another lawyer. Just keep looking for one that you're going to be comfortable and you're going to trust, because trust is the most important. With doctors, you kind of don't have that. Like, as soon as you cross that threshold, you're kind of already in it. And so you might have to see that specific thing through before you go get a second opinion, or it's a little bit harder to go get a second opinion because of limitations placed on us by insurance, out of network, in network, so forth.
Correct. Yeah. And I would agree that you should always get a second opinion, especially if you don't connect with your physician. You always have the opportunity to go look. It's just limited by whatever your insurance allows. The nice thing, though, is most insurances will cover a big health system. And so within that health system, there may be several offices within your vicinity that you can go to. Maybe you go to your family doc down the street and you don't like that person. Go to maybe the other clinic that is maybe a little further away, about 5-10 miles down the road instead, and see if you connect better with that physician. There are options. You should never feel bad because patients switch back and forth depending on the interaction that one day. Maybe they said something wrong or something inappropriate, or they just didn't connect that particular day. And so they want to switch. It happens quite a bit. And I can promise you physicians are okay. We have enough patients to see. We just want to make sure that you get the care you need by the person that you feel most comfortable with.
All right. We have the next one that you sent me. It looks like another one from Suits. Let's get it geared up.
I demand to see my client.
You can see him, but I'm not letting him go, because in 5 minutes, I'm going to come back to him with a sledgehammer.
Not so fast. I demand to see my client, and my client isn't Mike Ross. It's Harold Gunderson.
And you are?
Lewis Litt, Pierce Inspector.
You're telling me that a man who works at the law firm he's accused of colluding with just happens to be his attorney? Bullshit.
No. It's bullshit, because you think it's up to you who gets to represent Harold Gunderson.
If I walk in there right now and ask him who his attorney is, he's going to say it to you?
Doesn't matter what he says. It's 407. And if you don't let me see my client, anything he says after this second will be inadmissible. And I will rain down Fourth Amendment claims on you for the rest of your goddamn life.
Is this how you guys talk to each other behind the scenes?
Sometimes. I would say for the most part, 65, 75, 80% of the time, you're actually very cordial to opposing counsel because you're all in it together. Your legal community is a very small legal community. You've gone to law school with some of these people. You've taught some of these people. Some of these people have taught you. You've been in firms with these individuals. For the most part, there's a healthy level of respect. And behind the scenes, there's actually a lot of like good relationships that the clients don't actually see. So you might be going to war with opposing counsel, and when you guys step out of the court and the clients have left the courthouse, You guys might talk about family and how the wife or the husband or the kids are doing. You might even, plan on going on vacation together, or you might be meeting up for drinks or in a basketball league together or a pickleball league together. For the most part, it's very cordial and respectful, but there are times where things do get a little heated. And lawyers are sometimes really good at bringing the heat when it's necessary, and then later on being able to kind of put those emotions aside and back off and go back to it's just business.
So then how do you balance that relationship? Say you're on opposing counsel and you see that, hey, there's this one piece of evidence that could totally throw the other person off. Do people have that moment in time where they have to decide, do I really want to use this evidence to win and hurt this other person's feelings? Or is it just very professional? We're going to do what needs to be done to take care of the client.
Your number one concern is looking out for your client's best interest. What do you want to do by your client? And we have long talks with our clients to determine what path do they want to take. Do they want to drag the opposing side through the mud? Do they want a quick and easy settlement? Do they want something that's somewhere in the middle? And we're always checking with our clients as we go. If your client wants the most amount of money, we'll say, well, this is how you get the most amount of money. Here's your path. Is this what you want to do? And as you're going along that path, you continually check in. Sometimes it's just about making the other person miserable. And, that's a sad reality. If your client has enough money to do that, then your client has enough money to do that. We've all heard stories where it's like, I will spend thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars to make sure that that person doesn't see a dime, even if it's, against what is best for me. But for the most part, in court, there's usually not any smoking guns. And the reason being is you're exchanging evidence. So prior to court, you're usually dropping off all of your evidence. You've already gone through discovery. So depositions, everybody has deposition transcripts. And that way, nobody's caught off guard. And if you try to bring a smoking gun into court, usually the judge will stop, get the jury out of the courtroom, and you guys will then talk to see if it then can be admissible, or at least allow opposing counsel a day or two to figure out what that smoking gun was. So smoking guns are very rare. Usually by the time you get to trial, the smoking gun has already appeared and everybody understands what that piece of evidence represents and how it could hurt or help either side.
So then is there ever any type of relationship that is not allowed among two opposing counsels? Say we have a father and son lawyer who are arguing against each other, or a husband and wife arguing against each other. Would the judge ever say, hey, this is probably not in the best interest of your personal relationship, therefore we are going to actually remove one of you guys? Would that ever happen, or does everyone stay as professional as they can?
It sometimes happens. There are points in time where sometimes people have to recuse themselves. Like, you have to understand, like, maybe this isn't the best look. Judges, for instance, will recuse themselves. Let's say that it is somebody from their old firm, or maybe they were previous law partners with. They might recuse themselves from a case. Maybe their son is a lawyer and he's now in front of them. They will then recuse themselves. Or maybe it'll be that the firm won't even send the son. They'll send somebody else and won't even put the son on the case. It happens from the judge's point of view. From the lawyerly point of view, not so much. You obviously have to be concerned with how biases can play out and the perception of what's going to happen, and whether or not that perception can then lead to maybe other ethical concerns or moral concerns. And you don't want to play in that gray area, because it's an easy way to end up getting disbarred, or at least having people question your character and your reputation. But yeah, you'll have best friends go at each other. I think that if you have relatives, that's not off bounds either. One relative can represent somebody and the other relative can represent the opposing. And you guys have to go to war, because you have to do what's best for your client. And if there's any inkling of collusion where you guys aren't doing right by your client, that can be very, very hefty as far as repercussions and being disbarred and maybe even civil or criminal liability.
Great. Onward.
Okay, so this is kind of a combination. I wanted to get your opinion on it. All right.
Being a lawyer is harder than being a doctor. Can you imagine if you were in surgery and you were a doctor and you were operating and you cut somebody open and it's, oh shit, the spleen moved? That's what being a lawyer is, because the law changes. It's always different. You can go to med school anywhere in the world. The body stays the same.
I know that this is going to ruffle some feathers, and I know that even our podcast, based on medical and legal topics, we have never actually had that conversation, had that discussion, had that disagreement, whatever it ends up being, about what is harder. By us talking things over, I have a very, very healthy respect for what doctors do. You have a very, very healthy respect for what lawyers do. And we can point out different things in each other's professions that it's like, well, I can never do that. But this, I believe he's a defense attorney. He has a very, very hot take here. And so his position is that the law is constantly moving. It's constantly changing. On top of that, the law, your opposing counsel, the judge, you're constantly going against these other sources that are just trying to battle you, whether it's your opposing counsel, whether it's the judge, whether it's a witness, whether it's a police officer. There's always something trying to fight you. And I guess his point is that doesn't necessarily exist in medical. And I don't necessarily agree with him, but I wanted to get your perspective on his commentary.
We're arguing apples to oranges. Both professions do very specific things for their clients and their patients. We can't really compare what's harder or better or not. But I will say that the misconception that we don't have anything going against physicians is honestly something that we're dealing with currently, right? No matter what your belief system is, but when laws change, it affects the medical field. When abortion is removed from the federal side and it's thrown back down to the states, now all of these physicians who live in specific states have to then change their practice or be very careful on how they practice. The information about vaccinations are thrown out there by specific people, and patients starts to find that starts to become a hindrance on the relationship between the physician and the patient, whether that's trying to make sure that they are safe, trying to make sure that their kids are safe. It's always that hard conversation to have, and you may not see it, but there are a lot of people, a lot of influencers, a lot of grifters, a lot of whoever you want to call them out there trying to not only make profits off of people, make a name for themselves, but they're trying to make a movement so that they can move their status up. And sometimes it goes against the science, sometimes it goes against medicine. And it's hard when a lot of the public already sees physicians as the bad guys. They think that we're the ones taking all the money, we're the ones keeping cancer drugs off the market. It's really hard to fight against that sort of mentality. I would argue with him that the moving target is always moving in medicine too. The types of medicine we deal with every day, it's constantly changing. There's always new data coming out saying, oh, maybe this drug no longer works as well. Maybe this new drug works better. The side effects of this is new types of cancers, new types of diseases constantly coming out. These are all things that we're constantly learning, and it's different for every single person. The nice thing about the law is that it's the law and you can apply it to every single client the same way. It's just how you decide to use it. But for medicine, I could use aspirin for you for one specific reason and aspirin for a different person for a different reason. And the side effect profile may be different for each person, even though you're getting the same medication, the same dosing. This is not a hill I would die on, but it would be very interesting to have that conversation with him and try to hash that out. But again, it is arguing apples to oranges. I don't think the professions are parallel in that sort of way.
I completely agree with you. Years ago, it may have been you. Somebody asked, who's the smartest person at this table? Because we have a lot of successful, very, very smart friends. And, we're trying to determine based on our accolades and our resume and who went to what grad school. We all went to University of Texas. So, that was our baseline. I think I commented the smartest person in the room or at the table is the person that's needed the most for that very moment, for whatever's going on. My example was, if I have a sinking boat, the smartest person on that boat is the person who can prepare the sinking boat. It's ever changing. It can't be compared. And they're two prestigious fields, but it's two completely different things, because he's talking about the spleen doesn't move. Well, you know what? Things evolve, things change, practices change, studies come out constantly. Just like in the law, we have briefings come out constantly and decisions that come out constantly. And there's interpretation, and there's outside influences, and there's staff members and people. And sometimes people are just difficult. Sometimes machinery breaks down. Sometimes the email doesn't send. Like, there's all these constant things that exist that don't necessarily make your life easy. But I do think that there's one common theme, is that doctors and lawyers, with the schooling and what they're getting themselves into, there has to be a drive. There has to be a drive. There has to be an intellect. There has to be a want and a need to do that career. And you have to go through the appropriate channels and get the appropriate licenses and really dive into that career in order to be successful.
completely agree.
Well, I hope you guys like this podcast today. The clips were really, really fun. I love the commentary that Dr. Long and myself were able to provide. I see this being something that we do a lot in the future. But like we said at the beginning of the podcast, if you haven't already, please click that little button and subscribe. If you're on Spotify, please give us a follow. Like I said, we release our YouTube and our Spotify podcast every week on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Central Time. We also release all of our clips on Instagram and TikTok. So if you're on any of those platforms, please just give a follow and please engage in the comments. We love talking with you guys. We love hearing what you guys want to hear, and we love answering your questions. We hope you guys have a good one. Thank you for listening to the Medical Legal Brief with Dr. Long and Lawyer Nick, where medicine meets the law.
Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, this podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.